Good morning and welcome. This is Sunrise Daily. It's a beautiful Wednesday morning. I'm Ayo Makinde. Of all the information in that report, the most outstanding for me, which I'd like for us to pay attention so that we can stay on the issue, is the issue of passage of the Electoral Amendment Bill. The Speaker of the House of Representatives, as you heard him say, that within the next 2 weeks, the lawmakers have to pass the bill before the long recess the House and, of course, the entire National Assembly intends to go. Now, what is interesting for me in all of this is maybe we all should take a look. We could do a simple Google search and take a look at some of the highlights of that amendment bill and why it is important that we do the needful and why we should pay attention to it and keep the conversation going. There are considerations for pre-election matters, for election day matters, and for post-election matters. How in the world does it concern you? You need to find out so that we can all be on the same page. We all know how critical governance is. And who are the people to perform the functions of governance, if not the people that we elect into office? The major instrument, other than the Constitution, by which we recruit people, we elect people, we employ people, so to speak, into governance, to govern our affairs both at the federal and state level, whether in the executive, the legislature, is the electoral bill, the electoral law. How you play a role in that is very, very critical, and you need to find out. I'm also appealing to those of us who are young. As we all know, between ages, say, 16 and 35, 40 or thereabout, that's the demographic that's most populous in Nigeria. 60–70% of the people in that population, especially 18 and above, who are less than 40, 45, are about 70% of the voting population. How we play our roles in where we go from where we are now to where we want to be is completely in our hands. The 10-year-old, in another 10 years, the 18-year-old is 28 years old. The 8-year-old is 18 and ready to vote. What kind of life, what kind of trajectory do we want to put that 8-year-old for the next 10 years? Those are issues that I think we all should pay attention to. And that is why the electoral bill, the electoral law is important to you. You need to find out so that you can engage your lawmakers, engage the people that you have put into office to represent you at the National Assembly or wherever else. Otherwise, how else do we build a great nation? We'll return after now for the papers. To stay with us. Time to take a look at some of the papers this morning. We begin with the Daily Trust newspaper. And that leads with, well, perhaps what you would consider one of the most prominent stories in the country today. How FG used Interpol to extradite Kanu. That story is on page 3. Has 4 riders. Why I jumped bail. You'll find out. He'll face fresh charges, says government. ACF Ohaneze worldwide welcome rearrest. iPod leader to remain in DSS custody till July 26. All of that you'll find on page 3 of the newspaper this morning. Right under those pictures, you'll find that story. Special edition on insecurity in the Southeast is there. 2023, Igbo presidency will end Biafra agitation, says Ekweremadu. What's all of that about? Is that just politics, or the details are on the inside pages? Right under the nameplate, Afenifere to Buhari, initiate, transmit restructuring bill to NAS. Find that story on page 6. As well as this one, no petrol price increase in July, says NNPC. You know, each time we see that, question we're asking is, okay, is it going to come in August? Is it going to come in September? When is there going to be petrol price increase? Because it would seem like many people believe it's something that must happen. Find the details on the inside pages. Many universities are awarding fake certificates, says JAMB registrar. Stories on page 5. Question then is, hopefully you'll be able to find the list of those universities on page 5 of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. Otherwise, how do you know which one to avoid? That's the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. On to the Vanguard newspaper. And what do we have? Same story. How FG worked with Interpol to nab IPOB's Nnamdi Kanu. The story is on page 5. Court remands him in DSS custody. Fixes July 26 for accelerated trial. And there is a quote. I fled Nigeria to save my life, Kanu tells court. Kanu wrongly tried, detained, says Ejimako, who is IPOB lawyer. Don't manhandle him. He's a freedom fighter, Kanu's brother tells FG. His arrest, not the end of not the end of IPOB, says IPOB. Ndigbo will react if anything untoward happens to him, says Mbazulike Amechi. CNG insists on referendum, says Kanu's arrest not end of Biafra struggle, and controversies over where Kanu was arrested. Find all of that story on page 5 of the paper this morning. And right under the picture you see there, the picture of course, the IPOB leader. Population explosion. Nigeria sitting on time bomb, says Oba of Lagos. Oba Akiolu. Find the details on the inside pages. State of the nation. Nigeria is bleeding in many parts, says Afenifere. I heard this over and over again about Nigeria bleeding. Someone doing anything to stop the bleeding? I guess that's a job for us all. Right under the nameplate, 10,619 disengaged workers draw 5 billion naira from pension accounts. The story is on page 19. See that thing about pension? More and more people have been talking about it for a lot. So find out the details on the inside pages. On the back page, Vanguard Sports. You're a liar. Sports Minister dares Siasia. Wow. What's that all about? The details you find on the inside pages. And so many other interesting stories right there on the back page of the sports of the Vanguard newspaper this morning. Mr. and Mrs. There's a letter. The Mrs. is reading a letter and Mr. is sitting down. Mrs. reads, here's this poser. If your mother and your wife are drowning, who would you save first? And Mr. answers, the one dearest to my heart. I guess there will be a follow-up question. So who? Find the details in your own mind. The Vanguard newspaper is next. And it has this one. Disbelief, shock, trail IPOB leaders rearrest, rearrangement. The story is on the front page leads you to page 2. Court orders his remand in DSS custody, adjourns hearing till July 26. Ohaneze Afenifere Northern elders urge caution in prosecuting him. Kanu's arrest elimination won't quench agitation, says group. And Huriwa says, if you can arrest Kanu, nab all terrorists and bandits in North. Apparently that means that we have capacity. Details you find continue on page 2 of the Guardian newspaper this morning. And you remember we had that conversation with the GMD of NNPC yesterday. Here's FG's $4 billion stake in Dangote refinery raises dust. What does it mean? Why NNPC is borrowing to buy 20% equity. Rehabilitation of Kaduna Warri refineries to begin in July. Finance, energy experts pick holes. Again, the story continues on page 2 of the paper this morning. Senate passes PIB tomorrow. Bajabiamila promises 2 weeks. That's the story on page 3 of the Guardian newspaper this morning. And on to the Nigerian Tribune. Ohaneze, ACF, Afenifere groups react as FG rearrests Kanu. Why he was arrested, Malami says. Why I ran away. Kanu also says. The details you'll find on the front page continues on page 2 of the paper this morning, and that's his picture right there on the front page of the paper. Right above the nameplate, send bill on restructuring to NAS, Afenifere tells Buhari. The details are on page 4. Perhaps there should be some significant engagement on the meaning of restructuring so the whole nation has a corporate understanding of exactly what we are talking about when you hear the word restructuring. Right beside the picture, beg your pardon, just before that, still above the nameplate, Makinde sacks Chief of Staff, 17 commissioners. The story is on page 2. Is that some form of restructuring? Details on the inside pages. FG extends NIN SIM linkage deadline to July 26. You know, to some, it was something that's already done and dusted, but apparently we don't have it all together yet. So find the details on page 7 of the Nigerian Tribune this morning. And on the back page, you have sports, Euro 2020, Sterling Kane send Germany packing as England break 55-year jinx. It's the story right there. Mexico friendly, home-based Eagles won't disappoint, says Wala. That story is right there on the back page of the Nigerian Tribune this morning. If you take a look at the Nigerian News Direct, excuse me, what do you have? Why FG is acquiring 20% stake in Dangote refinery. It's attributed to the Group Managing Director of the NNPC. The story is on page 2 of the paper this morning. And other stories in the mix. How Nnamdi Kanu was arrested in Ethiopia, arraigned in Abuja. I guess that gives you another perspective to how that happened. The story is on page 2 of the paper this morning. Let's take a look at what you will find on the front page of the New Telegraph today. Abaribe, others lose 300 million naira bail bond as FG rearrests Kanu. That's what you have on the front page of the New Telegraph today. Court demands IPOB leader, court remands IPOB leader in DSS custody to continue trial July 26. How DSS, NIA, Interpol, Met Police got him. Ascribed to sources. Why his sureties can't recover bail bond, say lawyers. 36 years after failed Umaru Dikko extradition bid, Buhari succeeds with Kanu. That's an interesting twist to the story. Find the details on pages 3 and 29 of the New Telegraph this morning. Right under the picture, defections, pressure mounts on Secondus to resign. Party chair not under pressure, says Lugbodian, spokesman for the party. After Matawale, 2 other PDP governors set to join ruling party. And APC intimidating our governors, says PDP. How is that? The details you find on page 4 of the New Telegraph this morning. And there is an investigation on the inside pages, page 8, I think. Investigation says pollen could spread COVID-19. Find the details on the inside pages. On FX, flour millers invest 2.16 trillion naira on wheat amid restriction. The details you find right there on the inside pages of the paper, New Telegraph. Let us switch to the Leadership newspaper, and this is what you have. 2 years after jumping bail, Nnamdi Kanu rearrested, clamped in DSS cell. Find the story on page 4 of the paper. Attack on my home made me, beg your pardon. Attack on my home forced me to flee Nigeria, says Kanu. Calm in Southeast, ACF cautions FG in handling of matter. No comment, say Abaribe Asaridokubo. Find the details on page 4 of the paper this morning. Right under the nameplate of the Leadership newspaper, NNPC seeks bank loans to invest in Dangote refinery. Find the details on the front page, continues on page 4. Well, if you are wondering where all of that story in particular is coming from, you may go to our YouTube page to find that interview of yesterday with the GMD of the NNPC. And on the sideline of the paper there, FG to harmonize public servants' salaries. FG extends NIN/SIM verification to July 26. Poor preparation, cause of mass failure, says JAMB. All the details you see there. And this story is ascribed to the government of Niger State. We know where abducted Islamia pupils are. The story is on page 9. Of course, the natural question is, so what's holding us from bringing them home? Just imagine, as we always say here, a trauma on both the kids who are in captivity and their parents who are unsure of their fate. And right beside that one, PDP kicks as Matawale Zamfara lawyers defect to APC. And there's a rider, it's a shame, says Secundus. Find the details of that. Continue on the inside pages of the paper this morning. We also have a Blueprint newspaper for you, and that's coming up. That's it. Treat Kanu's trial with caution and rule of law. Who is saying that? Just who? The details you'll find on the inside pages of the paper this morning. And so many other stories you'll find on the inside pages of the Blueprint newspaper today. That's, of course, ascribed to ACF, Ohaneze, others, telling FG. Malami speaks on his rearrest, and after 4 years, that's about 4 years after jumping bail, IPOB NUM court orders detention in DSS facility. I would have been killed if I didn't escape, says IPOB leader. That's what you have on the front page, the lead story of the Blueprint newspaper this morning. And right under the picture, amidst PDP threat, Matawale joins APC. Buhari welcomes him. Find the details on the inside pages of the paper today. Right under the nameplate, e-registration. INEC receives 42,211 applications in 24 hours. Sounds like, wait a minute, we've been waiting for this. That's what you have right there. Excuse me. So if you have not registered to vote, the opportunity is still right there online. And so many other things you'll find on the inside pages. NNPC reveals how FG will borrow finance stake in Dangote refinery, and a number of other stories you'll find right there on the front page of the Blueprint newspaper. And that's the papers this morning. We're back for the issues. Just stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. Of course, naturally, our first conversation this morning, given all that's been happening all over the place, is insecurity. What do we need to tackle the issues that we have on our hands? Even yesterday, and perhaps almost every time we have this conversation, there's always that indication back to the issues that, look, insecurity is a major issue. We deal with insecurity, we have dealt with so many of our problems at the same time. But there's so many things to do. What are these things that we need to do to take them on? Brigadier General Sani Usman, retired, joins us this morning. He's a former Army officer and former Director, Army Public Relations. He joins us virtually. Thanks for joining us this morning. Let me begin with that quote you saw.
Good morning.
Good morning, yes. Let me begin with that quote you saw of the NSA, the National Security Advisor, who said that, look, apart from pandemics and natural disasters, the greatest threat to the existence of the human race is the global scourge of terrorism. It's everywhere, no doubt. But is there anything you see that we left as a gap that made what's happening all over the world get this close to us as well? Many would also reference that it's not something that's, yes, it's a global phenomenon, but it's not every country of the world that is having it as bad as we're having it now.
Quite true. What you said is right, and you are equally right. Just like in everything in life, they say in every rule there is exception. So much as it's, terrorism is a global phenomenon, there are some countries that are quite lucky. It is not as pronounced as it is the way it is in this country. And that notwithstanding, certainly is a worrisome thing that require concerted efforts on the part of the international community. And that is why you have coalitions here and there. And coming back home, we even have that of the Lake Chad region, you know, talking about the multinational joint task force and host of others. So basically, it's a very serious problem that requires the desired attention, given the magnitude of the damage it causes in terms of loss of human lives and destruction of properties.
So that's on the one hand. On the other hand, then, would be, what are we doing as a nation? I know you also are well informed about the fact that Nigeria is collaborating with some neighboring countries, and we always feature prominently whenever we can on international platforms to talk about the issues we are dealing with, both as a nation, as a leader in the West African sub-region, and as a reputable country in Nigeria. So in terms of collaboration, we saw, for instance, what the Attorney General of the Federation said, that there was a lot of collaboration in the rearrest of the leader of IPOB. That's one. We'll come to that. But in terms of collaboration, how well do you think we're doing with that, given that most of the threats, security threats we are talking about, are imported? Well, some of them are local, but some of them, a significant number of these threats, are imported.
Yeah, well, it's subject to debate because that issue of importation of threats and what have you. But the long and short of it is that if you are going to gauge the level of collaboration either among the West African states or the lecture reading, I think we are not doing badly, even though there is still room for improvement. If you recall, a period to 2015, the situation wasn't the way it was. But when the then new president came on board, he had to take diplomatic shuttle, people that hitherto were kind of neglected, talking about the neighboring countries who also bear the brunt of Boko Haram insurgencies were brought on board, and Nigeria showed the desired leadership. Beyond that, also, the multinational joint task force was kind of giving new impetus and what have you. Then the ECOWAS community, the ECOWAS states also, there is a renewed level of collaboration and cooperation. The issue of freedom, freedom of movement among the states and all the rest, the security agencies, particularly the immigration services, realize that to a large extent that hampers, as well as the customs services. So there are really areas of collaboration, even though there are rooms for more improvement. However, the problem we tend to have, actually, there are other partners beyond, the immediate milieu or environment, talking about the Chad, the West African states, and Africa and so on. But there are people that are well endowed, talking about the developed countries who also have, in terms of information sharing and technology, and to a large extent, that has left so much to be desired. But I think we are getting better, and of course, with the recent development, you can see things are moving forward. But actually, there is need for them to understand that the problem in Nigeria is not just a Nigerian problem, it is a world problem. Because if you look at the demography of Nigeria and our position in the Committee of Nations, this is the largest black nation in the world, and given our population, we are a force to be reckoned with. So whatever that is happening in Nigeria, they should show more interest beyond the issue of human rights. There is need for them to assist in strengthening democratic governance and, of course, training and equipping of the military and other security forces. With that, you can be able to have peace in Nigeria and, of course, peace in the world.
Well, when you talk about, training of the military, the question anyone would want to ask you is, and yourself, of course, you have added other security agencies, but how efficiently should the police be involved in the defense of the country against internal threats? The role of the DSS is clearly spelled out in the laws and the Constitution. The role of the police as the lead agency in internal security is also clearly there in our faces. How well do you think we are doing in that regard? Because there are those who are wondering, if we are giving so much responsibility to the military, where in the universe is the Nigerian police in all of these issues?
Well, I think if you are also going to give, if you are going to look at it, I think we have not done well. Why? Because if you look at it, period to 1999, we all agreed in this country that democracy is the best form of governance. And it comes with requirement and understanding of the fact that things take time. And the fact that we are coming out of military administration that has been there over time, there are things that need to be put in place. And one of those things is a credible and efficient policing system. And I kept on saying, there are countries without military, but there is no country without a policing system. And no country will ever live in peace if it doesn't have an efficient and professional policing system. Therefore, to what extent have we invested in the training, equipping, and the welfare of the police over time? If you look at it, the percentage, if you are going to, is negligible. And if we are going to have peace, or we are going to have, security in this country, we just have to go back to the drawing board and make sure that we have the desired policing system in this country. That means the numbers have to increase, the equipment has to increase, and of course, training has to improve. I mean, it is not just all this ad hoc training. And I know there are complaints here and there, possibly because the police is equally overstretched and overwhelmed. That is why you don't have that. And I know that, recommendations have been made. Take, for instance, the stratification of the police. Where are the police mobile force? To what extent have they been training? What is the exact number? And how many of these policemen and officers are really doing the policing duties as against attachment to the individuals? These are issues that we have to critically look at. And we have to go back to the issue of the legal framework. Thankfully, the Constitution was quite clear. And of course, we have the Police Act of 2020. We have to go back. Then what is the synergy between the Office of the Inspector General of Police, the Ministry for Police Affairs, the Police Council, and the Police Service Commission? Now we also have the Police Trust Fund. To what extent are these institutions or organs being coordinated and harmonized to the benefit of the average police officer to take care of his training, his equipping, and of course, well-being to perform optimally expected of a police officer? So these are the issues. And you know that to a large extent we have not done well, so we have to do more to ensure that they take their rightful position in terms of leading in the internal security architecture of this country. Let the other security agencies, particularly the military, be concerned about the defense of the territorial integrity of this country. So we have to do a lot in terms of capacity building, in terms of equipping, in terms of welfare of the police.
There are those who believe, General, that at some point we began to pay less and less attention to the police. Do you have any idea what could be responsible for that?
I don't know. I think what is there is that, just like I mentioned earlier on, they ought to have envisaged a situation that in a democratic governance, everything is done under, the purview of rule of law. It takes time, and people should understand that we have institutions that whenever you have grievances, you have to, take recourse to them. But you cannot have that if the institutions are weak. And part of it is our, the judicial system, the criminal justice system, and our policing system. We have not invested enough. We have not made them efficient to the point of expected of them as police for a Nigerian society. And also, if you look at what is the number of the police officers in the country, a population of 200, let's say 200 million. Let's assume there are 50 million Nigerians in diaspora. We have 150 million Nigerians within the Nigerian, territory. And of course, with foreigners and all the rest, other people living in this country, take or leave, you have not less than maybe 180 million or thereabout in this country, and you have a police force that is less than 500,000. I mean, you just look at it. Who detect and who prevent the crime, and now who prosecute and all the rest? So the numbers are not there in the first place. So we have to invest in the numbers. We have to train them. We have to equip them. So that is where we are all missing it. So, and we should have a plan, maybe over a period of time, maybe every six months, we should have, recruitment of police, and of course, to make sure that the legal framework is also interrogated to ensure there is flexibility so that people, some of these things are decentralized, people will have initiative. And let's look at even the concept of community policing. That was introduced over 14 years ago, but there is it's all motion, no tangible movement in that. And we need to do that. And because that is it. And you need to prevent, you need to detect and prevent crime, not that when they blow out of proportion, we don't know what to do, and you start blaming people because things are getting out of hand. There is lack of capacity to deal with it effectively. And I can tell you, with training, we have wonderful people in the police. If you equip them, you train them, you will get the best out of them. But you need more training, you need more equipment, and modern policing system is entirely different with what we had before. If you look at within the last 20, 21 years, that we have had democracy in this country, to what extent have we, invested in the, the security architecture, particularly in the police?
Well, there are those, I mean, some of the officers, the management of the police will also tell you that even the numbers of the policemen that you have talked about includes those who work in the offices, those who drive, those who are not really in the core service, but in the support service of the police system. But then, are you in agreement with those who say that we have an over-centralized police structure in the country? I mean, talking about the policing system. Do you agree with those who feel that the policing structure should be multi-layered and multi-tiered? So we have the federal police, you talked about the police mobile force, the state police, and then the community policing that you mentioned earlier. Do you agree with them?
Yeah, look, there is nothing wrong in having multi-layered police. We have seen it in other countries. But the most important thing is that there should be proper cooperation and coordination and synergy of effort among that, the components that make up the policing system. We have seen it in Italy, for instance. They have about 5 layers of police, but they are being coordinated centrally and it's working perfectly for them. And I see no reason why it shouldn't work in Nigeria. The issue is, if we have the numbers, if we have the training, if we have the equipment, and the fact that we allow people to do their job professionally, all these issues wouldn't have been, an issue at all. Let's look at even the police council. We kept on saying about that. You look at the composition of the police council. Each of the state governors is equally a member. How many times have the police council ever met in this country, within the last 20 years? So these are the issues. So had it been that it meets regularly and there is harmonization, issues will be brought to the table before they even blossom into, or escalate into something else. It will easily be nipped in the bud. So these are the issues that we should be talking about. So it is not those layers or no layers. Before now, the policing system was working perfectly. But the thing is that we invested in the policing system, is it the investigative, the forensic expert, the mobile police, everybody is doing very well. And there is a replenishment in terms of equipment, in terms of even the human resource, because some people get old, some people are wounded in the course of, some are medically challenged. You have a system that keep on replenishing it over time.
You talked about the police council the other time, but that's squarely on the table of Mr. President. He's the chairman of that council. You very well know that, and the constitution isn't clear as to how frequently that meeting should hold. Do you think there should be an adjustment to the constitution to that effect?
I think the whole idea, there are certain things that are very, very dynamic. There is the level of security challenges will warrant the frequency of meetings. So invariably, if we give credence to some of these institutions, things wouldn't have been the way they are. So what I'm trying to say is that there are people that should be drivers to all these, institutions. For sure. Take, for instance, if you are going to use your own system, you know that by 7 o'clock it is news time. Of course, there is news director, news reporter, and news producers, and they will do their job. They will schedule it. So basically, these are the issues that we are talking about. So the blame game on all the rest of the thing won't help. We have a system that if people are doing their work very well, it will serve us right. I think it's just a question of going back to that aspect. And let there be a system whereby everybody does his or her job accordingly. And by the time you continue in that way, institutions will be strengthened that even if there are those with deviant behaviors, they will not go far, they will be detected, and you keep on adjusting. So the issue of police council sitting frequently, well, the constitution will not spell out things. And that is why we have other departments. Take, for instance, Ministry of Justice, the Ministry of Police Affairs. Let's see to what extent will these meetings be held, Is it on quarterly basis or monthly basis or twice a year or on the basis of exigencies of the security challenges in the country? So it is not just even the police council. Every other, institution within the country should be viewed and should toe that line in which, there are planned and programmed ways of doing things and checks and balances. People should know what to do at any given point in time. And more so, you remember, it should be people-centric. Because whatever you are doing is for the well-being and the benefit of the Nigerian society.
Absolutely, and that also raises a lot of concerns and brings me to the peculiarity of the security challenges in the various regions that we have. I mean, today we're talking about banditry, kidnapping, and the rest of it. In the northwest, terrorism and all, in the northeast, and so many other parts of the country having peculiar security challenges, it would seem. Just, was it yesterday or day before yesterday, we saw an investigation that says that bandits and the terrorists are incentivizing people to recruit them into acts against the state, pretty much recruiting them and paying them to the effect. How do you think we can even handle that matter? It was an investigation. Clearly, we would say that the intelligence is out there. Is there any way we could have avoided that?
There's so many ways of avoiding that. You see, the issue is whenever there is a kind of vacuum, you have people to, fill in that vacuum. Take, for instance, let's look at the local government system. To what extent is it working? They are supposed to be very close to the people, and most of these problems are even local. When it comes to election time, the word, the polling booth, and all the rest of the thing. These people hibernating in some of these bushes, committing atrocities. They belong to a particular ward, they belong to a particular district, they belong to about local government, a particular local government and state. So if those institutions are working, definitely you won't have this problem. By that, an average Nigerian is hardworking, dedicated, and resilient. Give him or her an enabling environment, you get the best out of them. And that is why you see them doing marvelously well outside the country. To what extent are we, creating avenues for those that are not employed to have jobs at hand? And those who are into other entrepreneurship, what extent are they getting loan? What are the incentives? What are the safeguards and what have you? These are the issues that, so if somebody is having that kind of affinity and, sense of belonging, it is very difficult for anybody with dubious intent to come and lure him or her into some of these criminal activities. Most of them, they were forced to go into it because they have to keep body and soul together. And that is where the government comes into play. They should improve on the social security system that we have in this country. People that are not employed, to what extent you can cushion the effect of that unemployment. And those people that have something to do, to what extent are you creating an enabling environment for them to do better, to maybe employ more, to have a better way of life, so that anybody with dubious intent will not take them. And again, the intelligence you are talking about, to also find out what is the source of fund for funding these criminal activities. Yes, we all know, take for instance the bandit, anytime you pay ransom, definitely you are increasing their ability to purchase more arms and, to do one thing or the other. And again, I kept on saying this. If, for instance, a bandit collect a 10 million naira ransom, or maybe less or maybe more, do you think a bandit will be working with 10 million naira in his in a bag in the bush? No. Somebody somewhere keep that money for him. Somebody somewhere buy drugs for them. Somebody somewhere buy arms for them. Somebody somewhere get ammunition for them. So who are those people? How can we stop this? These are the issues. The proliferation of small and medium arms, and even now the new industry locally, manufactures arms within the society. Common motorcycle now, they are now recalibrating it to serve as some components of small arms in the Nigerian society. So how do we stop that? And how do we, arrest the flow of illicit finance, to these criminal groups? So these are the issues. So it's a kind of delicate balancing, and it's a holistic thing that we have to look at. So the issue that you are talking about, recruitment, you may not completely, eradicate it, but at least it will be reduced to the barest minimum, and people within themselves. And again, most importantly, beyond that, is the level of security education among the Nigerian society. We see it. People sometimes they go into these criminal activities unknowingly, because the criminal always think ahead.
General, you've raised two critical issues that I would very much love to engage you in. One, you've talked about the proliferation of small arms, and you've also talked about illicit financial flows. Those are very critical issues which even the president has mentioned from time to time. But we'll take them on when we come back from this break. Thanks for staying on. Brigadier General Sani Usman is still with us this morning, former officer of the Army and former Director of Army Public Relations. General, you mentioned two critical things the other time, illicit financial flows and proliferation of small and medium arms. I didn't know there were medium arms. You mentioned that earlier. But I remember that, I think it was 2015 to 2016, the president himself was talking about these illicit financial flows and the need for us to track them. And you have talked about how those things one way or the other fuel insecurity. I think it was about last month or the month before, we also heard this report that about 400 million small arms in the south, in the West African sub-region, about 70% of them are said to be in Nigeria. And no doubt those are catalysts, so to speak, for insecurity. To talk about these issues, especially the issue of the financial flows and these small arms that you have mentioned, how do we begin? Otherwise, it would seem like if we're not able to track these and they continue, then there is no end to insecurity in Nigeria.
You're quite right. And honestly, it's worrisome and very disturbing, especially if you go to the, do I say the grassroots? And if you hear or see things, take for instance the way they, fabricate things, and that, ammunition is being sold just like beans. All you need to do is to make the necessary inquiries and you get it. It is worrisome in the sense that this is a culture that is alien to Nigerian society. We are very hospitable, we are very peace-loving, and how comes? So you also think of the conspiracy theory that somewhere, somehow, the arms manufacturers are also doing the best they could to ensure market by continuously, flooding our, society with these small, medium, and light weapons. But thankfully, I think the federal government just recently has established a kind of center to deal with that, and a retired major general is in charge. And we have to go beyond that, actually, to make it more effective, because they have a lot of work to do. The issue of proliferation of arms has, to a large extent, a tremendous impact on the security challenges we're having in this country. And of course, there is no doubt about the fact that the security challenges were also compounded by, the fact that somewhere, somehow, there is a kind of flow of finance to further, ensure the sustaining or the continuation of this conflict. So usually, I think there is need to continuously be putting eye on the money. You follow the money, those involved, the financial intelligence unit and other instruments of, checks at the central bank and even the banking system should be, further strengthened and have more eagle eye to see to what extent this money is being used in financing some of these criminal activities within the society. Then again, the issue now is to also look at what are those, to what extent are we looking inward, the factors that brought about all these issues. Because to some extent, there are people that they feel, they are not secured, so they have to secure themselves. And that is where you have to strengthen the security architecture in this country, that it will be up and doing so that it will give the people hope and sense of security that they desire so that they can run. Because if an average Nigerian knows for sure if there is anything untoward that is happening, if he or she reports, there will be proactive action and, justice will be done. I can rest assure you some of these issues will be bygone. Then that means we have to go back and look at, the relationship among the components of Nigerian society. We have to emphasize on the need for peaceful and mutual coexistence, the respect for each other, and realizing the fact that we are all equal stakeholders in the project called Nigeria, in which everybody has a role to play in terms of, regardless of your.
Oh dear, I'm pretty sure that we'll have Brigadier General Sonny Usman back. Okay, well, General, please go ahead with what you're saying. We lost your connection for a bit.
Yeah, I think a call was coming in. It was coming in and was able to put a stop to it. So just like I was saying, the issue again is having a holistic approach to the security challenges in this country, so that an average Nigerian will have a fair, understanding of the fact that, look, he or she is equal stakeholder and has a role to play, and, then again, beyond it again, the global nature of these security challenges require, bilateral and multilateral approach towards mitigating these challenges. It is not just enough within the Nigerian society, but we also have to identify those foreign partners and, other, the non-governmental agencies that mean well for this nation, that they can assist us in dealing with these issues. Through educating people, making them understand that, Nigeria has the potential of being a great nation more than what it is before, but it requires a lot of sacrifice, a lot of effort. And we have to go back again to our time-tested, conflict resolution mechanism. What are the roles for the traditional rulers? It is not just enough you just create traditional institutions just for the sake of having them, to satisfy selfish interests. No, they are serving a purpose because they are closer to the people. They know who is within their domain. And that is why you see, going back to what you are saying, that in some countries, they don't have the security challenges. It is the same even within Nigerian society. Despite all the mirrors of the security challenges, there are some parts of this country, they are still living in peace and harmony. Take, for instance, I've been moving around the country for the past 7 days. Right now, I'm not even in Abuja, and I'm having a good time. Why? Because those areas are secure. Why? Because the people are involved in the security architecture. And the people will not be involved if the desired leadership and sense of belonging is not given. And it is not just for the sake of, sense of belonging in terms of monetary. No, it is the fact that you have to create an enabling environment, equip the security agencies, let them be doing, they should be up and doing so that people will have confidence and trust in them. And you will see that they become equal partners.
Well, you talked about multi-level cooperation, international cooperation of security agencies. I think that's one of the references made by the Attorney General of the Federation when he announced the rearrest of the leader of the proscribed IPOB, Nnamdi Kanu. How significant do you see, first of all, what's your take on the rearrest of Nnamdi Kanu?
I think the repatriation or the rearrest of Nnamdi Kanu, I think it's a positive step towards greater international cooperation and collaboration. Therefore, I even want to use this opportunity to commend the Interpol for collaborating with the Nigerian security, the Nigerian police, and other security agencies that brought about his release, arrest. So it is sending a clear message to all that with the proper process, no, criminal will, evade justice. So the issue at hand, if we are even going to look at it, is purely national security versus national legal system. And the starting point is just to look at the circumstances that brought us to the point we are in, now. The incidents of last Sunday, which is the arrest, and of course yesterday, the press conference by the Honorable Minister of Information in which he gave details. And it is heartwarming to see that they did not even waste time in arraigning him before a competent court of, jurisdiction. So when you look at his activities, this was somebody who was standing trial, and on held ground, he was given bail, and he jumped the bail, and he flouted the bail conditions and what have you, and, to the detriment of Nigerian society, security, to the detriment of Nigerian security. So these are issues that everybody should have a fair understanding. The fact that somebody is trying to destabilize a particular nation, you cannot just fold your arms and think that it is a Nigerian problem. It has the capacity of affecting you. Take, for instance, even if at worst, if Nigeria is gone into crisis, which country in West Africa, or even the whole of Africa, do you think that will contain, the number of refugees that will be flooding out of this country? We have had instances during the apartheid days. We have had refugees coming from Namibia and all the rest, and we know how strenuous it was. And just not quite long in the years gone by, we have had instances from some of the West African countries, when we had the Sierra Leonean crisis and the Liberian crisis. So people should look at it from that perspective and understand that there is need for more cooperation and more collaboration among the international community so that we ensure a semblance of peace and security in the world at large and among the Committee of Nations.
And how then do you react to the position of the Ohanese, the Afenifere, the Northern Elders Group, who are cautioning the federal government on prosecuting the gentleman? Remember, of course, what happened when he was first arrested, the kind of reactions that came up at the time and now. So you may want to speak to the difference between then and now, and how do you think the federal government should be taking on this issue in a way that, will assuage the fears of these regional groups that we have, the Ohanese, the Afenifere, and the Northern Elders?
Well, I think, first and foremost, I would like to commend the Southeast political leadership for this associating themselves with the struggle and reaffirming their faith in the Nigerian state. Okay? And of course, coming to the North, we also need to commend them, for, their tolerance and understanding and sense of maturity, including the youth, for resourcing to, take a legal, process of resolving issue. And that is exactly how it is supposed to be. And I think the federal government has shown clear sincerity of purpose by arraigning him before a competent court of law. And I think what is desirable now is to allow the judiciary to do its work and let them be dispassionate and look at his case on the basis of his merit, and let there be diligent and speedy trial to ensure that justice is served to him and of course, victims of his action. And government, again, should go out of its way to ensure those, particularly those police and other security agencies that were killed in the process or injured, something has to be done. And of course, beyond that, again, people that lost one form of, their properties and what have you in the course of all this melee, that ensure there should be compensation. I think we should support the government. We should put an eagle eye to ensure that, yes, the right thing is being done, to ensure that justice is served. And most importantly, again, I think the intelligence communities and services need to investigate it thoroughly, while all this thing is going on, to find out the sources of his funds. And of course, we have seen the Eastern Security Network with arms and ammunition. Where did they get them? And those collaborators, individuals and groups, to what extent were they involved in destabilizing the Nigerian state? I think once we know, I think we are going to have, a good, a peaceful Nigeria. And the government should also address, genuine grievances, because really there are Nigerians that are really, grieved, to ensure that justice is served, and, to make sure that people are given more sense of belonging. Because there is kind of deficit of trust. In fact, people were even saying actually whether he was one or not. But the commitment shown by the government and the resilience, I think, is commendable. But all we need to do is to encourage it to do more, and let them be, professional. Let them also ensure that they respect the rights of individuals. But again, whoever that feels aggrieved with whatever it is, there are clear ways and processes of, of seeking justice. Agreed, you might say access to justice and all that, but I think trying will definitely make a difference rather than, resorting to violence.
Well, there was something you said, let's just talk about this as we close. You talked about the fact that nature abhors vacuum. And you also mentioned the need for engagement. Nnamdi Kanu is not the only one, for instance. There are pockets of community leaders in various parts of the country who would always have following, simply because, just as you mentioned, the trust deficit is quite high. So in terms of engaging people in the different pockets of the country to create that sense of belonging that you talked about, how do you suggest that be taken on so that our fragile security, so to speak, even in the community that you talked about now, is not depleted any worse than it already is?
Yeah, I think this has provided a window of opportunity. Take, for instance, Southeast governors. I think they should put their acts together and deal with security issues locally, without simmering them. And not just in the South, it's everywhere else. The federal government should understand also there is need to constructively engage these people, opinion leaders, and leaders with genuine interest in the peace and progress of this nation. Let there be that, enabling environment where everybody will contribute his or her best to ensure that Nigeria, meets up with its aspiration of being one of the greatest nations in the world. And we should all put hands together to make sure that Nigeria attain that aspiration, so that it will just not be a pride to just Nigerians, but the black world as it is.
Brigadier General Sani Usman, former Army officer and former Director, Army Public Relations, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay. Next, we talk about security or the state of the nation, whichever one you choose. We're back after now. Well, Reverend Ladi Thompson joins us now. He's a strategic security consultant. He joins us from our studios in Abuja. Good morning and thank you for joining us. Well, since the last time you were here and so many very, very serious issues that you raised, would you say we're on track in addressing the national security challenges?
Well, let me just say that from a lot of comments and what is coming from the government right now, I think there has been a reality check, and that I do hope that right now, because of that reality check, the government is prepared now to provide the kind of leadership we need for this final push for us to get a stable, peaceful nation. By that, I mean the fact that we have transited to the final phase, I believe, of this war against terror. And looking at it from a very positive side, there are dark clouds, okay. There's a lot of bloodshed still going on. There's a lot of kidnappings and all that. But if we look beyond it, we begin to catch glimpses of a new nation, a major nation, a peaceful nation. So my prayer is that we get this phase, this final phase. My prayer is that we get it right. If we do, the nation is going to have peace. For this final phase, I must tell you that I've given it thought. The policy I believe that must be upheld above all by government is a policy that realizes that the best way to tackle insecurity at this time now is to grow security. We have to grow security. We have been on a learning curve for a long time, and at this phase right now, it will be inexcusable for us to say that the government has not learned what we are up against and what to do. Let me put it like this, a practical example. All over the country right now, everybody is looking for something. And I think the easiest way to emphasize it is to have the federal government and the leadership of Nigeria realize that from the almajiri to the mechanic to the medical doctor and the nurse, when everybody goes to a mango tree, they are not interested in how green the leaves are. Nobody wants to understand the back, how strong the trunk of the tree is, or how powerful its roots are. From the almajiri to the mechanic, to the doctor, nurse, and everybody, they've gone to the mango tree to look for mango fruit. There is a fruit Nigerians are looking for, and that fruit is the total solution to this insecurity. And that fruit is the growing of security, like I have mentioned. This time, I believe that the government has now seen, from all the comments coming and the changes being made, that the solution to this problem, the military aspect of it, we're talking about asymmetrical warfare, hybrid threats and all that, and force multipliers, at best is only 30-something%. And let me tidy it up by saying this, is that I believe that the government has come to a point where they realize that if we're going to win this thing right now, it's no longer just about personnel, men, and equipment. We have to ideate the nation. We have to supply the other three things that I have mentioned that every other nation has when they are tackling security. Beyond this time, if those other three things are not put into place, honestly, a lot of people around this country will be very displeased, and we will never understand why they have not been put into place.
Well, Reverend, first of all, let me ask you about growing security. We'll come to those three things, but what do you mean when you say we need to grow security?
It's as simple as trying to explain to a person that you don't fight darkness by pushing darkness out. You fight darkness by introducing something. You introduce light. So if we're going to grow the peace in this country, this is the key word. We're going to have to ideate the country. To grow the peace in this country, we're going to have to accept that there must be a change from the concept of leadership that operated in the older times to a new concept of leadership that can produce all that we need to terminate this problem finally. And it is all here now. it's all become, you know, a game of the mind, so to speak. To build the peace, I mean, you've heard this over and over. People are talking about including, getting the public involved and all that. These are things we've been saying for years, but we have been slow to learn that this war can never be won only by the military. To grow the peace, we need to get the entire country involved. To get the entire country involved, we need to introduce a national ideology that gives every Nigerian citizen a place of pride, a place where he has a stake in making sure that Nigeria stays as one, among other things. So that's what I mean by growing the peace.
Well, there are many other issues to take with you, Reverend Thompson, but we have to take all of that when we return from the break and talk about engaging people. The question is how? After this break, please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. Reverend Thompson, let's begin with what you just saw and heard. How significant do you see the arrest of Nnamdi Kanu in our fight against all forms of insecurity in the country?
I think it's an integral part of the whole. Because you see, when I said that we need to ideate the country, the gap and the vacuum that the opportunistic streak in Nnamdi Kanu was able to capitalize on was because Nigeria today is yet to realize that if we are going to be a part of the global community and to cooperate properly, we are going to move away from the leadership of men to leadership by ideas. You see, once Nigeria refuses to supply the idea, that's why I said we need to ideate. We need to provide ourselves a national narrative that gives value to the life of every citizen in such a way that everybody is bonded together. As long as that vacuum continues, first of all, the security situation will never be resolved. We need to supply a value system. We need to supply also an architecture of thought. We need to think 30 steps ahead of the threats against the country. Now, to Nnamdi Kanu, we have to proceed with caution. It's a good thing that he has been arrested by the federal government, but moving forward, I mean, we need to commend the security services for having done that. But however, moving forward, if you heard the tonality of caution with which most commentators have spoken, we would want the federal government to realize that putting Nnamdi Kanu on trial is a part of a whole picture. First of all, I would like to tell us something, that there's a difference between the concept of Biafra, the dream of Biafra, the event of Biafra, the war of Biafra, the trauma of Biafra, and then the opportunists like Nnamdi Kanu who have taken advantage of the fact that all these other things we mentioned have never been given closure. And because they have not been given closure, the average Igbo youth, just like the average Nigerian youth in any other part of this country, wakes up in the morning and does not see a future. He does not see a future because it is the duty of the government to provide him a vision. Now, in the absence of a vision, you will find out that people instinctively, when they become traumatized, they see terror, left, right, and center, they don't see a future. Instinctively, people begin to look for the future in the past. And that's why you will find out that the clamor for Biafra, the clamor for Oduduwa Republic, and all those irredentist calls and, separatist calls were getting stronger and louder and finding place in the hearts of men. Now, in proceeding forward, we need to be very careful, because when the government puts Nnamdi Kanu on trial, you want to make sure that it is his opportunism that is put on trial. Now, if he is wily and crafty, he's going to want to mix all the issues together. If the federal government ever makes a mistake, a strategic mistake, of allowing the concept of Biafra, the event of Biafra, the Biafran war, the trauma of Biafra, and all these other issues that have not received closure, if we ever make the mistake of allowing all those things to come to this trial, the outcome will not help the country. But I believe that there's more than enough wisdom in the leadership of this country. I must say something that I want all of us to realize right now. We need to rise above petty politics of the day, to realize that the challenges facing Nigeria today are twofold. One, we have the threat, the global threat of terrorism that has its local face. Now, it has come to meet ancient problems that were never, ever resolved. We're talking about the cleavages, divisions, talking about corruption, talking about religious intolerance, and other things that had always been on ground, but were never addressed convincingly. So the complication now is this opportunistic attempt by Nnamdi Kanu to hijack the hearts of the young people, and he had some degree of success. Nobody listened to his rhetoric, nobody who has listened to his approach would say that this is kind of the future you want for any Igbo man or anybody at all. But the point is, like you mentioned earlier, there's no vacuum. Nature abhors vacuum. There's no vacuum in life. So except we supply an overarching vision for the nation that bonds all of us together, that gives value to the lives of our citizens and gives us an assurance of a tomorrow, you will find out that opportunists like this will always continue to do well. So we have to be very careful. There are many young people who, in the absence of that vision, the ideating that I spoke about, in the absence of that, they have latched on to his demagoguery and his opportunism. Now, we're going to have to, as his elders in the country, will always continue to advise the government. Go about this very clinically. Separate the issues. Show clearly that this is an opportunist who was about to lead a whole section of the country in a totally negative direction. And I don't think that is something that's too difficult to do. Well,
is that, in your opinion, why the other three main ethnic groups in the country, the Ohanese, the Afenifere, the ACF, also caution the government to be careful in this prosecution?
Precisely. They are saying that because there's been a groundswell of calls for separatism. And I've said to you that the only reason that is happening is because we have refused to supply the nation with a single vision that is profitable to all. Let me tell you this. In the design of nations, there are two basic things that leadership must always take note of. It is the anticipation of pleasure and the fear or dread of pain. In creating any nation, you must toggle these things. Now, this is the point. If the average person looks and the future is bleak, and what is prevalent, the news coming to him on a daily basis, is the anticipation of pain, rather than looking forward to the pleasure of fulfillment, of prosperity, of progress, and things like that. Now, don't forget that the anticipation of pleasure is more powerful than pleasure. And let's not forget again that the dread of pain is even more powerful than the pain itself. So these are the tools. The terrorists have been using the dread of pain to try and shape the destiny of Nigeria. Now, it is up to Nigerian leadership, like I said, to realize that it's not just a game of numbers or, oh, I have this number of men behind me anymore. What leads in the world today is the leaders of ideas. So there must be a fresh vision that assures the constituencies controlled by Ohanese, controlled by Afenifere, and all other groups like that. There has to be something supplied from the center. And mark me, because I've told you that this is one of the things that is still missing, that we're expecting to be put firmly and established firmly in the days ahead. But if it is not done, then we will understand that the affairs are truly justified.
In talking about vision, and a national vision, a number of people have spoken in that vein as well. I remember Professor, I've forgotten his name right now, also mentioned the need for us to have a national ethos. However, in the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Section 15 is clear. The motto of the Federal Republic of Nigeria shall be unity and faith, peace and progress. Sub 2 of that section says, national integration shall be highly, actively encouraged, while discrimination on the grounds of place of origin, sex, religion, status, ethnicity, or linguistic association or ties shall be prohibited. Is it a problem of coinage or a problem of ideating, just as you said earlier?
I think it's a problem of having a reality check. You see, first of all, the Nigerian Constitution contains a lot of words. And those words, frankly speaking, may not be worth what we think it is until those words have been injected into the hearts of men, our citizens. Now, don't forget that we are coming from a background of trauma. We are coming from a background of slavery, and then we morphed into colonialism. And the earlier statesmen who helped us to get our liberation in this country, they were very clear in helping us to realize that the edifice that we call Nigeria initially was totally a British idea. And they admitted, if you listen to one of the comments of our statesmen in 1968, they all admitted that at independence it was handed over to us. However, the comment went on to say that what was handed over to us at independence had within it the forces of its own disintegration, forces to disintegrate the nation. And three things were prescribed by these statesmen. They said we had to tackle those forces of disintegration efficiently and quickly. Then they asked us to define the Nigerian inheritance and preserve it before talking about making sure that life is peaceful, prosperous, and forward-looking for every single Nigerian individual. You see, the way we have been going about this is as if to say that a statesman like Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa did not know what he was saying on the 7th of October in 1960. The speech he gave at the United Nations till tomorrow, I think, is his most inspiring speech. In the closing paragraph, he acknowledged what he called intractable problems. He said this publicly. And then he mentioned the fact that there's something called eternal truths, that when Nigeria will be ready to halt all the infighting, the breakages, the cleavages, the faults, and all the things that we inherited, that we would be able to fall back on eternal truths. Now, don't forget the Willings Commission, 1958 report.
One moment,
all
Reverend.
The things you see playing out, divisions in Nigeria.
Just one moment, Reverend. I don't want to lose track of that critical thing that you mentioned, that at the independence were things that could divide the country, even from as far back as then. What are those things, if you can identify them?
Well, quickly, they were just simply fruit. Just go and read Lugard's. Actually, it was designed by Tubman Goldie before the British government took over the territories of the Royal Niger Company. And then they brought in Lugard, Lord Lugard, to come and supervise, the amalgamation of Nigeria and the putting together of Nigeria. Now, if you go and read his dual mandate, you'll find out there that there's a policy called divide and rule. That divide and rule policy is to create something that will keep failing without falling, as long as the colonial puppet master is somewhere in the background pulling the strings. Now, it is not just a Nigerian thing. Practically, most of the nations of Africa were all designed like that. It's just that it has taken us quite some time to understand those forces of divide and rule and how they work, so that when we understand those things, I mean, they're called algorithms. I can tell you some of the things that we need to do for us to get rid of, you know, the effects of the divide and rule. But the point is that through the years, unfortunately, what this government has inherited is the fact that through the years, no leadership has ever convincingly been able to span the divide and rule. And more so because corruption was increasing. The monster of corruption was also growing side by side naturally. Now, the engineers of the Nigerian system knew all this. They could look 100 years ahead and tell you that, look, this is what's going to happen by so and so, based on what we have designed into your system. So the divide and rule is the key word here that we have to neutralize.
The question then is how?
Let me put it like this. A lot of the solution to Nigeria's challenges today, talking about the ancient solutions now, not the external aggression of terrorism. A lot of the solutions, what we are looking for is in the archives of the colonial office in our former metropole nation in the UK. Now, some of them have been declassified. I sent a team to the UK some years ago. And when they brought me the documents and I looked through it, I couldn't but admire the brilliance of men like Lord Chandos, Lewis Harcourt, and all the people who sort of helped to put, you know, the colonial contraption together. You couldn't but help to admire the fact that these people think deeply, even in creating a problem. Now, the advantage we have is that these are days of artificial intelligence, deep learning. These are days when you put all this data into a computer, it can go over spans of 600 years and all that, and help you to locate what we can call the solution algorithms. Now, let us look at Nigeria. The divide and rule was applied in Nigeria in two tranches. Very clever. First of all, there was a northern divide from the southern divide. Now, the animosity was engineered in such a way, now for you to know how deliberate this was, go and listen to an interview that was granted by Ernest Ikoli, who, of course, you know, died in 1960. Ernest Ikoli, one of our earliest statesmen. Ernest Ikoli said, when the colonial officers from Britain were coming into Nigeria, the colonial officers going to northern Nigeria and the colonial officers coming to southern Nigeria were always at loggerheads. They were even conditioned and programmed to fight each other on Elder Dempster, on the ship, on the way to Nigeria. They considered themselves enemies. Now, if the colonial administrators considered themselves enemies, how much more the cleave between the north and the south? Now, don't forget that these people were so clever that it took only 399, practically, colonials to rule over 7 million people in northern Nigeria in those days. That was in early 1900s. So trust me, we're not dealing with something that you can solve without thinking. So I will just tell you that what we call solution algorithms are available. Nigeria likes fire brigade. You know, this fire brigade thing is never going to work. So, but for now, we're short of time, so I will mention one of them. Nigeria has been crafted in such a way that if you look at our predictable history, we can't even discuss without fighting. The traumatic events of our past are so emotional, and this, of course, affects the issue of Biafra now. Now, let me say this to you. One of the first things Nigeria had better do, which we're looking to leadership to do, and honestly, non-state actors, we have begun to make our moves because we are looking ahead as well. All of us are concerned in the future of our children and our grandchildren. The first thing we need to put into place is called non-violent communication. There's a platform of communication that is not strange to Africa. It's called non-violent communication. It has been well developed in many parts of the world. And I'm going to tell you something. Except we establish the platform of non-violent communication, the animosities, the effects of the divide and rule, the gaps between us will never be spanned. But if we apply non-violent communication and insist that it must be the national platform for all discourse, you will find out that what it does for us is that it separates substance from smoke. So, having done that, we are able to locate the real issues. Then we can put the Biafran war, we can give it proper closure. The events of Biafra can receive closure. Listen to me, the concept of Biafra will never die because thoughts that have been well articulated will never die. But what wisdom does to things like that is that you deconstruct it. You granulate them. Sometimes you remove the venom from them by separating issues and making it simple for the average citizen to consume. So this non-violent communication between North and South is important. Also, even between Southern nations. Now, let me say to you, everybody is calling for Odua Republic, everybody is calling for Biafran this and that and that and that, not realizing that the enemy of the country is the one that played the chess moves to make people look for the future in the past, believing that we cannot ideate, we cannot bring fresh ideas to handle and give our children and our grandchildren the future that they deserve. So the point now is, if we're able to, first of all, quickly establish non-violence, the southern part of the country can bridge all its gaps quickly. There will be no need to talk about looking for the future in the past. Now, because Nigeria was divided in 2 steps, we also have to reconstruct this in 2 steps. Now, the same people who set out the problem have also given us a formula to pretend as if we are really united in the country. So to be politically correct, before you can even apply the solution, you have to be very courageous. It will take separate total unification of the North, total proper unification of the South, before we can now come for a practical unification, profitable, of both North and South. Then and only then can we talk about an overarching vision that the whole of Nigeria will believe in.
A central...
We can always try any other course, but I can assure you that the future will bear me witness. There's a wisdom that is better than weapons of war.
I think, you know, when you talk about communication, a good number of people will agree that that's a critical, major problem, you know, in the whole melee, because just as you mentioned, it will seem like we don't jaw until we war. Question then is, why does it have to be like that? But you know what? Let's take 1 minute to explore a thing or two. Take one message, and then we'll be right back with you to talk about engaging the younger population of Nigeria. Do stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. Reverend Thompson, in another 10 years, the 18-year-old is going to be 28. I talked about that earlier. And you say that there are very interested Nigerians are also looking forward. So let's look forward 10 years. The largest population in Nigeria today are young people. And from all that you have said, it will seem like they don't even have a clue what we are dealing with. How do we begin to communicate with them to bring them on board?
Well, first of all, we will never be able to do that until our leadership totally and practically moves away from the leadership of men in terms of numbers and transits and takes an upper step to the leadership of thoughts. Now, whether we like it or not, because the global community has shrunk, that younger generation, we may be complaining about them, that they're doing drugs, they're doing that and all that and all that. But the truth is, this nation never really made any provision for them. And because of the problems that this nation is facing, this nation is yet to make any provision for them. So in a nutshell, we're sitting on a time bomb. Yet, this is not something that is very difficult to sort out. If we realize that a lot of the ideas of people in leadership positions, I didn't say all, I said a lot of, and I mean, right, let's move above politics right now. A lot of people are still thinking in the past. Those youths that you're talking about hold the key to the Nigerian future. Now, I want to take an example from the Southwest, because, you know, in the Southwest, we have this parable that says, you don't look at a matter from only one side, that if you do that, you are like a knife. It's only a knife that has only one side. But a cutlass or a sword has two sides. And at least minimum, we look at things from two different sides. And that you can imagine a man who wants to cross a road, who looks only on one side of the road and doesn't look at the other side, is not likely to last long. So let us look at things from the side of the younger generation. Number one, a 30-something-year-old man in Nigeria is considered to be a child because there's been very little provision for them. But amongst them, you will realize that they have realized that the future of the globe is on the digital platform. So, you see, we have a digital divide in Nigeria. The anachronisms, the anachronistic generation are still looking back and thinking that these are the days of typewriters. But there's a younger generation that has the advantage of the processing speed and the wide latitude of digital computation.
Well, Reverend,
if we only would listen to the younger generation, we would find out that most of the solutions to the Nigerian problem are actually in the hands of the younger generation. Everything from smart houses, designing houses that run on solar energy, primarily, in a place like Africa, it has taken us this long. All these things are common play in the hands of this younger generation.
Well, Reverend, you know, it's interesting that you raise it this way, and I'm just hoping that with all of the conversations that the federal government has advised that state governments should engage, let's hope that they will actually create those platforms that will engage this young generation. We are completely out of time right now. We have. So thank you very much for your time and your thoughts, and it's been quite strategic lecture in security, if I can put it that way. Reverend Nnamdi Thompson is a strategic security consultant. Thank you so much for your time and your thoughts this morning.
Pleasure is always mine.
Absolutely. So let's see how many of those messages you sent in as contribution to this program that we can take. Chief Ngozi Okolie says, congratulations to Nigeria, to the Nigerian government for arresting Nnamdi Kanu from far away. May they put little or same effort and arrest Boko Haram sponsors and leaders who live among us, and we will have enduring peace in our dear country. On the same issue, we have a mail that says, I want to begin by saying that the problem of Nigeria is far from Mr. Nnamdi Kanu and IPOB. Jailing or even killing Mr. Nnamdi Kanu will never bring an end to the agitation of the IPOB or the people of Biafra. Instead, it will worsen the case in Nigeria. Nigerian leaders should find out what the root of the matter is, then tackle the same issue from the root. Truly, We anticipate a peaceful and united nation. God bless Nigeria. God save Nigeria. Well, I have to thank you very much. So many other messages. Hopefully we'll be able to take them tomorrow sometime. My name is Ayo Makinde. Do have a wonderful day. Stay safe.